Welcome, everybody, to the latest Joe Dale webinar. Tonight is my absolute pleasure to be working with Piers and Mark from Futbol Lingo. The connection between football and languages, I think, is a very strong one. And I'm delighted to see so many people who have registered for this particular webinar and have come along live as well. I'd love to see lots and lots of questions appearing in the chat. That would be amazing. And we can find out all about how we can make that connection between football and languages. Today is the 15th of May, 2023, and I cannot wait to get started. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Mark Muddyman, who's going to tell us a little bit about Futbol Lingo, and then he's going to be having an interchange with Piers throughout the session, looking at the app, talking about the visits to schools, etc. So lots of cool information to get our teeth into, and I can't wait to put your questions to the boys as well. So over to you, Mark, and thank you so much for this opportunity. It's great. Over to you.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you for the introduction. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for taking time out of your evening to join us tonight. I'll introduce myself fully in a moment with the slide that's coming up. But tonight we're going to be speaking to you about how you can harness football and use football as a vehicle to gather the interest of some of your pupils and hook them into wanting to be a keen linguist for life, which is what we're sort of looking to do with this application. We work with professional teams, we work with professional players in the Premier League, in Italy, in as far as Brazil, all over the world, and we've been doing that for the last year or so. And tonight we're here to introduce you to a little bit more about what we're starting to do in schools and what we're starting to do in the world of education as well. So as you can see on the screen there, Futbol Lingo is a language learning app specific for football, really. And our view is to kind of connect the world through languages and through football. So, Piers, if you wouldn't mind just skipping through to the next slide for me, mate.
Yeah.
So just to start by introducing myself, and then I'm sure Piers will introduce himself. My name's Mark Muddyman. I'm a UEFA A licensed football coach and also hold the Advanced Youth Award. But I have a background in teaching. I'm a holder of the DETLs, and I currently work in higher education, delivering HNDs to full-time footballers, really, who are looking to get an education alongside their football. And in that environment where I work, I have 15 different learners from different parts of the world that all speak different languages. And I have to get by each day with sort of helping them with broken English and also trying to communicate in their mother tongue. I've spent the last 14 seasons before that working in elite youth development. So I started at West Bromwich Albion and Birmingham City, where I worked part-time in their academy. I was fortunate enough to work with Jude Bellingham for 2 seasons quite closely when he was 9 and 10 years of age. Obviously, he's gone on to go and play in Germany and things like that. So that was something that sort of was a part of the motivation to put this project together. Also spent a little bit of time at Watford during my time there. Jadon Sancho was at the club at the time, and he was around 14 years of age. And then obviously he later went to Germany as well. So again, another experience of working with someone who's traveled abroad. And I spent time as a scout at Manchester United as well. And one thing that inspired this project is during the time at some of those clubs, there was many times where I was told, right, tonight you've got 2 French boys in your training session, you know, and I'd have to deal with it at short notice. And that was one of the things that kind of inspired the project that you're going to see a little bit later. Piers?
Right. Thank you, Mark. My name is Piers Kiembe. My story is a little bit more complicated. So I was born in Germany. I was born to Congolese parents. So naturally in my household straight away, I grew up with French, with Congo's Bantu languages, Lingala, and then obviously German. I moved to the UK when I was 14. That was back in 2003. Not so long after that, I met Mark at a football academy where we became good friends around the age of 16. Since then, I then graduated from that football academy, and I went on to the States to study there on a soccer scholarship, which is obviously our football. There I studied at the University of Texas, which was at the border, you know, between the US and Mexico. That's where I picked up Spanish. I didn't make it as far as I wanted to with my football career. So upon coming back, I pursued a PGCE. So with the languages that I spoke, I thought I could teach an MFL, which I did for a few years, alongside obviously following my passion of playing football and coaching. So I also went through all my badges, such as the A license, the AYA, went back to university to study another master's in psychology, because I thought it might help me, you know, with teaching, whether that was in football or in schools. Went back with Mark, who pursued this idea, contacted me because I speak a few languages, and ever since then, you know, we've been fortunate enough to put this idea together, and like we always say, hopefully inspire a generation of linguists. Let me go on to the next slide. Mark, do you want to start?
Yeah, so here is just sort of piecing together really some of the experiences that we've had in our journey. Just starting with some of those of myself there. So in the bottom left-hand corner, still with a young, fresh face and a bit of hair there during my time at Watford. And then in the other pictures there, mainly in the sort of further and higher education space, working in football, but you know, in these sorts of environments, you get a lot of boys that come over from overseas to study on some of the courses that we run, obviously in the pursuit of their football dreams. And I had many of those experiences along the way during my time at Kidderminster Harriers and at my current employers, which is Future Pro Academy in Coventry. And then the image with both of us on there on the left hand side is just a podcast that we featured on that you can go and check out if you wanted to learn a little bit more. That's on the Coaches Network podcast, and it's called Languages of the Game. And in that particular podcast, we focus a little bit more on football and a little bit more about our experiences in relation to languages and the app itself. Whereas tonight we're going to be speaking a little bit more on the education side of things.
As for myself, if you look at that picture at the top left-hand corner, that is a picture of the team, my university team that I played for, which was the University of Texas at Brownsville. Brownsville is located, it is the last town in the United States. It's right at the bottom of Texas on the border, where, you know, because we're in the States, the institution, in the institution we spoke English, but everything outside of that institution was Spanish spoken. So even though I didn't want to, I was sort of forced to learn Spanish, because if you look at that squad there, there's not a single player in that picture that is English or US born. They're all from different parts of the world and communicate in different languages. Every time we go into schools, I do communicate that to the kids. You know, that is a big part of my story and a big part of the reason why I fell in love with languages in the first place, despite speaking so many before I even went to university. In the middle, towards the right, you see a picture of myself at Burnley, where I currently work, where I also have to communicate in different languages, given Vincent Company, obviously from Belgium, has brought in a lot of players from different countries with whom we have to communicate oftentimes in their own mother tongue. So, you know, being able to speak those languages helps, and, you know, communicating that to the people that we deliver to is quite useful.
Just on that piece, just before you change slides as well, obviously bottom left-hand corner was when I was at Watford. In the first team around that time, they had around 23 different languages spoken in the first team. The ownership model was all an Italian family. Much of the communication from the owners through to the managers through to the players. Yes, there was English spoken, but there was an awful lot of Spanish and Italian spoken during that time as well, with over 23 languages being spoken in the first team at that time. So those sorts of things really open your eyes, particularly if you're someone that wants to work in football, just how much learning languages can be beneficial and help you climb the ladder and get nearer to the first team environment. So why is tonight going to be beneficial for everyone on this call? Obviously, everyone in this call is really education focused with jobs and things in school environments, and this is what we're looking to do and what we have been doing for schools since we launched around a year ago. So this part of the project's been headed up by Pierce, but he's been into many different schools so far, delivering motivational talks. Many schools are trying at year 8, year 9, etc., to try and really grasp students' enthusiasm for languages as they head in towards their options being selected at year 10, and those motivational talks and opening up people's eyes to the exposure that we've had to languages in the football world certainly connects with many different students. There's an awful lot in those assemblies there that are football fans, and those who are loosely football fans, it's also engaging for them as well. Another thing that we deliver is classroom workshops. So we go into classes and we deliver activities that are football themed, which gather the interest of the pupils within those lessons. So it might be, for example, Pierce, you might want to speak on some of this a little bit more in depth, but it might be that we speak about a certain competition, for example, the Copa America, and we might hone in on the languages that are spoken on that side of the world, and we might look at using languages around terms and phrases around bids for tournaments and things like that. It might be that we do one that's a little bit more dressing room based. So if you were going to deliver a team talk, what words and phrases would you need to call upon? If you was on the football pitch, what words would you need to call upon, etc. And we sort of engage the students in those ways using football themed language that can be found in an interactive way using our app, which you can see in the top left hand corner there. Another thing that we deliver is practical football sessions. So for example, we would have 20 or 30 minutes at the start in the classroom to outline some tasks that the students then have to carry out in a practical sense on the pitch. So it might be that they're not allowed to speak on the pitch, for example, in English. They might be given a certain language that they need to communicate in, and they have certain words that they have to try and say in the practicals. And the team that use the most words in the half-an-hour game, for example, would win the game. Things like that we use to engage the students, but make it practical and get a ball involved. And one thing that we find with that is it engages them. It makes them realise what it's like to be a foreign player, maybe abroad or in those sorts of situations. It's challenging and it's memorable, and it stays with them. One thing we offer all schools that invite us in to deliver events and motivational talks and workshops, etc., is the opportunity to then have a multi-user license for Futbol Lingo thereafter. So if you have the opportunity, for example, to bring us in to deliver a workshop or deliver a motivational talk or a practical session, one thing we do for those schools is we then provide them with the resource, the app itself, on an ongoing basis thereafter. But the app, which we'll demo to you tonight, is also available for school licenses. So for example, if a school wanted 30 licenses, we would do a bulk order for you at a discounted rate, which would potentially be used as a resource within your lessons, or as something that could be used for extracurricular revision, or maybe even an activity that you want to use for certain students to try and engage them. If you know that football is going to be the anchor that's going to gather their interest, it might be that you give it to those particular learners, or it might be that you have some disengaged students that really aren't buying into languages, and this might be something that just creates an entry point for them in terms of their passion. Another thing that we're looking to organise this year is school MFL themed events, and what we mean by that is we hire a facility, we put on an event at that facility, and we invite in 5 or 6 schools to come and attend. And that event would be all related to football and MFL, and bringing the two together to try and harness that passion, but integrate MFL into it and try and make it a real memorable experience that's going to engage students and get them interested in modern foreign languages moving forward. And we're going to be hosting a few of those moving forward. We're looking to host 3 a year. One in the Midlands, one down south, and one up north as well. And there'll be around 6 or so schools invited to each of those events. So if that's something that you'd be interested in, we'd be more than happy to give you some information on that. On our app as well, we have some tailor-made content, and we're always putting out tailor-made content on our social media, and things that you might even pitch yourself and maybe want to use in your lessons as maybe as an arrival activity or something like that. So, for example, we have things that we post related to the languages that are spoken by some of the top players in the Premier League at the moment, or some of the top managers. We have posters that have different formations on, that have all of the different names of all of the different positions on the field and things like that. So there's other tailor-made content that we can provide for your school as well. And the aim, really, one thing that we found useful in the events that we've ran so far is there are cross-curricular links. So there are schools that say, you know what, this links with PE, and it also links with MFL. Can we bring the two sort of together to try and create that cross-curricular outcome? Pierce, you might want to come in a moment and speak on that. And that way it allows us to create those subject links so the students can see, right, this part of the session fits with what I'm doing with PE. This part of the session fits with what I'm doing with MFL as well. And the content is suitable for all age groups. The way we've structured it so far is that it's done in chapters, which I'll show you briefly a little bit later. So it starts with the field of play and simple words like offside, halfway line, these types of things. And then it goes into a bit more of a coaching vocabulary, and then it breaks off to words that you might use to greet your teammates or to praise your teammates and words like that. One thing we're going to do in the future is we're going to structure it so it can go beginner, intermediate, advanced, and make it more like that. And another thing we're going to introduce as well is where a teacher or someone who's responsible for maybe the users can oversee the results in the quizzes and the results in the activities that we do. And these are things that are coming in the pipeline. Pierce, did you want to touch on any of those things there from events you recently delivered?
I mean, in regard to the cross-curricular links and subject links that you already mentioned, in a lot of our workshops, we link MFL or the stuff that we deliver to more than just PE. What you'll find in our workshops that there are a lot of links to geography, given the countries and the languages that we cover, the cultures that we cover within that, as well as historical links. For example, when was the last time, let's say, England won the World Cup? Obviously, we would make that a little bit more tailor-made to the target language that we are covering in that workshop. Other subject links that we make are biology, for example, when we talk about nutrition. What else is there? Well, yeah, we will get to more of the workshop related content a little bit later. Mark's going to cover some more about the app before that.
Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, we want to inspire a generation of linguists through football. And some of these images here on the right-hand side are some of the great work that's happening on behalf of the Premier League in other areas. So the Premier League have had initiatives around history, they've had initiatives around equality and diversity, reading and writing, English, different things. And one thing that we've done is we've met with the Premier League and said, you're doing amazing work in all of these areas. What about languages? What about, we're the one country in the world that seems to be happy to just speak English. What can we do to use football to try and incentivize children to, become a lifelong learner of languages, really? And we think this is really important when it comes to developing players, because many players are now starting to go abroad. And also, when you look at it from a football point of view, sort of between 50 and 60% of the Premier League and other top leagues around Europe are all made up from players from overseas. So in order to give our players and our managers and anyone who wants to go in the world of football really a chance to thrive at the top end, you need to be able to get by at the very least in different languages. And traditionally, it's normally the young boys maybe who are a little bit self-conscious maybe when it comes to speaking in foreign language and things like that maybe choose to drop out of this subject. And we think football can be used to incentivize and infuse them, and we should be using football as an opportunity to engage them and then use that as our way of championing modern foreign languages. So the app itself, okay, what is it? So Futbol Lingo is an app especially designed really initially to help players and coaches around the globe overcome the language barrier. That was our initial aim, really. So during lockdown, we both found ourselves with a lot of time on our hands, and we said, right, how can we make this time useful. And this was an idea that I'd shown Piers, obviously with Piers having the linguistic skills that he does, and me having an interest in this area and wanting to develop in this area in my own career. And he said, well, why don't we get together and try and make a tool that we would both like to use as coaches, and then put it into the world and see how it goes. And during the lockdown, we saw a lot of sleepless nights. This was the product that we came out with. But although it was originally designed for players and coaches in the football environment, what we actually found is an awful lot of people have said, this would be fantastic for my class. Can I use it in class? And we said, yeah, of course. And then the feedback that's come back has been amazing. And some of you hopefully would have seen that in some of Joe's tweets lately. So it's a really engaging tool that, can potentially harness the passion of the game and make that the entry point for certain students. As I said, it was created by myself and Piers, who both hold the UEFA A license. Piers being a former MFL teacher, and many of the people that we work with to create this app are multilingual coaches at a really high level, and we used professional translators to make sure that the mistakes were kept to an absolute bare minimum. Some languages were even checked 2 and 3 times before we actually published it. So that's the app itself. If you wanted to find it, it's available on the App Store, it's available on Google Play, and you can get it direct from our website, which is futbollingo.com. And if you wanted a multi-user licensed version of it, you can email us and contact us, and we can arrange that for you. And I've already seen a couple of questions there, which we can touch on a little bit later. So just a short video, just to paint a picture of what the app is and what it does.
We can't hear the audio too well. Have you shared the audio on the sound? Do you want to just check that? If you go to the floating toolbar and click on the more options and make sure you've shared computer sound, and then maybe if we play the video again, would that be okay? Because we can't really hear it.
Yeah. Piers, you able to do that your end, mate?
So on the floating toolbar, top right, it says more. And then you have to select share computer sound. There you go. You want to start from the beginning? All right.
Would you like me to start from the beginning? It was just music.
Yeah, please.
That's all it was.
Yeah. Oh, okay, that's fine. Is that
it was just music.
Great. Okay, no worries.
So apologies for the audio error there. Hopefully you got to see the visual and some of the features, but if you didn't, don't worry. A lot of the information on this slide you will have just seen popping up on your screen. So these are some of the features. So we've got 1,600 words and phrases in 15 different languages, and they are all football specific terms. They're not words that you would be able to find in a traditional bilingual dictionary. So let's say, for example, phrases like play out from the back, win your headers, movement in behind, play between the lines, different phrases that you hear in football, all in different languages. And they're not necessarily a direct translation, but they are what would be used in place of that term in that language. So, for example, in England, we might say in possession. In Spain, they might say with the ball, for example. It's different little words and phrases.
Translations are contextual.
Yeah, they're contextual, so they're not all necessarily completely direct translations. Within that as well, we have an interactive quiz. So any of you that will have used Duolingo, it's very similar to that. It's an interactive quiz. We have a reading quiz available, we have a listening quiz available, and we have a writing quiz available as well. The writing quiz has 2 levels to it. So it has a word bank, and it also has the ability to type the answer in as well. And within that interactive quiz, there's 39 different chapters, as I alluded to earlier. So you can work your way through the chapters, starting with the simple language, such as, halfway line, 18-yard box, these types of words, and then move it on to more sort of football specific and coaching specific language that you might hear within a typical training session. So that's where you gather your vocabulary. The next two features that are just on the halfway point on the screen there are a session planner and a match day planner, that you create your session in one language, and at the touch of a button, it translates it into another language. So this is where our interactive events that we run all of a sudden become very interesting, because the students may be tasked with planning a match day, for example, right? We're going to play a 5v5 game. One team has to play like Man City, one team has to play like X team, for example. Think about how they play, think about what they do on the field. You need to go and find words and phrases that match up with their style of play, and you need to put it into your match day plan. So with the ball in possession, it might be play out from the back. It might be dominate the ball. It might be words like this, for example. Out of possession, it might be press high, or win the ball back quickly, these types of words and phrases. You put it into your session plan or your match day plan, whether it was a coaching session or on a game day, and at the touch of a button, it generates a PDF which has your sort of instructions down one side, with say the English flag, for example, and if it was in Spanish, down the right hand side, it produces the words in Spanish. So a really useful tool. We see many coaches like Pep Guardiola and Jose Mourinho go on the field of play when they're coaching with a clipboard, and again, this is something that could be taken pitch side, and we've got coaches around Europe in some of the top leagues that are already doing that and using it in that way. Two other things that we have as well is a language support forum, where our users can sort of lean on each other for support, ask other people for help if they're struggling, and a resource section as well, which directs our learners to other content that's football specific that can help them with their language learning. So for example, you can, let's say you're learning Spanish, you can click on podcasts and it will direct you to several different football podcasts, where you can go and listen out for some of this language, some of this vocabulary that you might learn and you might pick up during the time when you're using the app, and also things that might engage the learner if football is of their interest.
Mark, did you want to give a quick demo of the app just so that people can see what they would see on the desktop version?
Yeah, mate, no problem. If you let me share my screen.
Yeah,
fine, mate.
I'm going to stop to share now for a bit.
No problem.
So it's worth mentioning that this app is available on the as an app on your phone via Google Play and the App Store, as well as on the desktop when you go on the internet and type in www.futbollingo.com. It's available on different in different formats.
Of course. So this is just a web version of the app. It looks slightly different on a phone or on an iPad. In a moment, I can potentially show you a club version of the app as well, that we sometimes create a bespoke version for clubs. So for example, we met last week with Newcastle United, and I can show you what that looks like as well. So this is what the interface looks like. At the bottom here, really simple, you can flick between the languages that you are learning. So you click on there, and as I said, there's 15 languages available. All of the major sort of European football languages, but we have Arabic on there, we have Mandarin on there, even things such as Icelandic are on there as well. So for the purpose of this, if we just go English to Spanish, we have two different sort of interfaces. So you've got the coach's interface and you've also got the player's interface, and they just differ slightly. So if we just look at the coach's side of things, as I mentioned, some of the features are just here. So words and phrases, when you click on it, you'll notice that there's 19 different chapters, sort of in the order that I've sort of alluded to. So field of play, words related to the game, offside, etc. Positions, different staff members potentially that might be within the framework of staff at the club, game formats, so like 5v5 up to 11v11, formations, and then here we start to get into some of the real football language. So if we just use, for example, phases of play as an example, and in here we may have words like transición ofensiva. So we've got audio files there.
Transición ofensiva.
As well. And we also have videos and images that accompany it as well. I'll just scroll back up. So there's a moment there where the team have transitioned when they've regained the ball and then look to attack. We just come off of there for a moment. So if you go in possession, con el balón.
Con el balón.
You know, you've got the audio file there. We have it
Con el
balón. Well.
balón.
And then if we just scroll down here, so you've got the team there with the football in possession of the football. So as I said, there's 1,600 terms like that. As you can see, they're defined here as well in the relevant languages. And what the learners can do is, as they pick terms up, they can click the memorized words function here. And you'll now notice that on the term here, the memorized words function is there. And you can also favorite the word as well. And by doing that, it goes to your profile, which is up here. In the memorized word section, you'll now notice in the phases of play, 16 words that I needed to learn. Con el balón is now green. I can flick between the two languages and see the words that I still need to pick up. So you've got words like counter attack there. So again, click the memorized word. Now all of a sudden on here, it displays the number of vocabulary that I've sort of submitted to memory as I go. Hopefully that gives you an idea of the words and phrases. Another thing we can do here as well is we can search. So it might be, for example, you search for a phrase and then it would pop up like so. So in English, I've searched for that term and it pops up here.
And this becomes extremely useful when the pupils are using the app as part of a task in our workshops, where they have to search for different words and phrases that they then take out onto the court or the pitch, you know, to then play football or warm up, etc., and instruct each other or talk to one another, you know, or even within the classroom workshops, you know, which we have many of. So, you know, the app can help with that, and that search function can be a godsend when there is so many terms there, as we continue to add to the terms as we go along, because we keep updating.
Yeah, and just on that, one of the workshops Pierce recently did, he tasked the students to deliver a warm-up in different languages, and in here we have athletic development, physical words, such as intensity, pressure, etc. And we also have commands as well. So across those three chapters, rather than just searching for a specific term, students can also be encouraged to go to a particular chapter where they can go and find certain words that are specific to the task that they're currently doing. So that's the words and phrases. If I go to the interactive quiz next, this is the bit that's kind of, the best way to describe it would be a little bit like an interactive language learning platform that you will have already seen before, but just a football version of it, really. So we've got the reading on the left here, we've got the listening in the middle, and on the right here we have the writing. So you put your words in here in your word bank.
Wide left.
So it'll tell you in English what the phrase is that you're looking towards, and then you put your answer in using the word bank and then click through with the bit on the right here. So as you can see, it's all seems to be coming up with all the wide terms. As you can see, we're just flicking through, learning our football terminology as we go. Okay, incorrect, that one. You get the idea. Words pop up here at the bottom. As students get a little bit more comfortable, they can start to flick and turn it into a writing task if they wish as well. So you've got that option, and it records at the bottom here how many you've got correct and how many you've sort of got wrong along the way. At the moment, it's 15 questions, and the word bank is around 9 terms, you know, per word bank, but we're going to make that easier and more difficult as we go as well, and we're going to add a few different bits and pieces to it as we go, but this is the sort of first version we've brought to the market. So if I just come off of here again and we just go to, let's say, phases of play, Again, very similar. See at the bottom there. And this is good, you know, it's just might be an arrival activity. It might be a little homework task for someone. It might be something to engage someone who's maybe not buying into something. For me, I find it really, really useful to pick up these little words and phrases that can then help me with my players in the environment that I'm working. And this little quiz on the side here is a random quiz, so it incorporates the listening, the reading, and the writing all in one. Two of the other features that are quite interesting that you might wish to see are the bilingual session planner and the match day plan. So if I just go back, if this one here creates a session plan, and obviously this one here creates a match day plan. So if I just click on it, the sections here literally are just drop down menus that you just select from, or text areas. So for this one, for example, it might just be you just type your session in there, for example. Later on down here, you have drop down menus. So for facilities, for example, you can put in, I think it's up to 3 in each of these. For facilities, it will pop up with something like this, little drop down menu, and you can select from some of the terms that you need. So it might be that you've got an outdoor astroturf. So you click that and you click use selected phrase. So it's really nice and easy. Again, if we go in here, if it's not available in this drop down menu, you can go straight to the free search. And the term that you're looking for will be in here. So equipment, footballs, cones. Nice and easy. So you've got your football cones and bibs there in your equipment section. Here you can come up with objectives for the session. So it might be some technical terms, some tactical terms, some physical terms, some psychological terms, or things that you're working on in those particular areas. Again, aims and objectives for the session and your coaching points. So for example,
Mark, have you got a PDF of a finished one?
Yeah, I will have, mate. I will have. I'll just quickly put in 1 or 2 words in here for you just so you can see. So let's say the term is develop possession. And I'll just literally 1 word in here for you, just so you can see how it comes out. So you'd go through the sections and complete it. And then this button here generates a PDF. So at the end, you can develop your session plan and it will look something like this. So obviously at the moment, it's only got 1 thing in there. But in aims and objectives, you can see we've got develop possession in English, and we have the Spanish translation below. Over here, we have coaching points, okay, and we've got it in 2 languages. Now, the good thing about this particular feature is I could have 1 group doing it in Spanish, I could have 1 group doing it in German, and very quickly and easily, we can flick and create the same document in 2 or 3 different languages quite quick and easily, just like that. And across the whole session plan, as you can see, it's not completely filled in there, but it would break down very similar to how it has done on the left side here in the facilities and the equipment section. Match day.
Go on, Mark.
Very similar. Sorry, mate, 1 second. Match day, very similar. So it produces a document that looks something like this. Obviously, I haven't completed this just for the speed of the webinar, but it would have the positions of the players down the left-hand side here in English, so striker, midfielder, etc. It would have the positions there in Italian in that middle section here. You have the students' names here with their formation there. And again, you would do your match day plan, okay, and it would pop up in 2 different languages. So in possession, there in both languages, out of possession, etc. I'll for the purpose of the webinar and the stuff that Piers wants to show you, I'll just whiz over some of these. But in here, users can come and have a little look at you know, different forums that are on there where other users are asking for advice, or they can come in and request their own advice from different users. From a resources point of view, again, If I just change this to German, we go to English to German podcasts, for example, we direct our users to other places where they can go and hear football-specific language in the language that they're learning as well. Piers, anything else you want me to cover, mate?
No, I mean, I just wanted to add that in terms of the session plans and the match day plans, especially in Key Stage 4, sort of year 10 and 11, you know, we have set tasks in the past where, you know, they create these match day and session plans, and then for the practical, they go outside and coach each other, either through the game or through a warm-up, using those match day and session plans. So they would have to create them themselves in the workshops.
Yeah, and we do this with not just schools but also professional football clubs as well. So we met this week with Newcastle and they're currently testing this out. Their version is a slightly updated version, as you can see at the bottom here. It has a little different feature as well, which is the turn of the day feature. So every day at around 9 o'clock GMT, a new word becomes available on the home screen. So any users that download this app to their phone, if you was to encourage your learners to download it, or if you was to download it, every day at 9 o'clock it pops up and gets you to log in really and check out a new word. So the word for today is restarts. As you can see, it pops across in all the different languages on the app. If you was to click on it, it would take you through to the specific language that you've got it set up at the moment to flick between. So for me at the moment, obviously English and Spanish, it would pop up like so. And we can create these branded dashboards as well. Piers, I'll stop sharing my screen there, mate.
Yeah. I'll go back onto the presentation.
And I'll let you jump back in on your presentation.
Okay, let me just share my screen.
So some of the benefits, as I mentioned earlier on, you know, it creates an entry point to MFL, which is something that is going to captivate potentially the students. You know, football is the sport of the country, you know, the national sport. You'll have some students that are obsessed with football, some that, you know, maybe don't like football quite so much, but generally, you know, an awful lot of people will buy in if there's a football involved. I know personally from my own point of view, anytime that there was some sort of football involved as a student, I was more likely to tune in. So it makes it an interesting entry point for students, and it might inspire them to look as to why there should be further learning post maybe GCSE as well, and to see the value in continuing with it over a long period of time. Obviously, it's going to potentially improve vocabulary. It may not be specific to what they're learning in their GCSEs, but it is going to be specific potentially to other places in life if they go down the football route. Or if not, it might just allow them to develop things like pronunciation and develop other understandings about the way the language is structured and the order in which words come and things like that. It's easy to access. In your hand, you know, you can use it 24/7 to aid learning. At the moment, we've got reading, writing and listening in there with the plan to introduce speaking in the future. It's a very unique and pioneering tool, so that whilst there are other platforms and other people out there that use football maybe to inspire languages, we're one of the only people out there that have a specific app that can be used and that can also be used in the classroom, etc. Looks to promote inclusivity and promote people sort of looking at other cultures and other languages and other ways that people communicate. And it hopefully will be a tool that will drive engagement and keep people potentially interested in languages as well.
All right, we're now going to move on to the school delivery part of things, where we in more detail cover a little bit more of the content that we deliver in schools. Okay. So whenever we go into schools, one of the first slides that we share is this slide of the FIFA logo. One of the reasons being is, especially for a lot of boys, but even a lot of girls, they will know this sign because of the game. So straight away, it's a hook. Who in here plays FIFA? Most of the time in the room, you see 2/3 of the room put their hands up, and then straight away it creates a topic to talk about. And we go further into FIFA as an organization, and the languages that they cover, which is English, French, Spanish, and German. So the big three plus English, of course. And again, it's something to talk about, something that they might not know, that most people that work for FIFA have to be at least bilingual. And then we go more into the football side of things, because everyone likes football, and football is probably the reason that the schools bring us into the schools. So we go into talk about the representation of the nationalities in football, not just in England, but also in different countries. And that's straight away where you can see a little bit of the subject linked to geography. Again, something the kids might not know. One of the overwhelming things is that now more than 60%, it's now more than that, because this is from last season actually, more than 60% of representative players in the Premier League are now foreign. And then we go into some of the kids' favorite teams. So I would ask them who they support, and people will tell me that they support all sorts of teams. And we talk about we talk a little bit more about the clubs in specifically, and how many international players there are at their clubs. Again, something that many people didn't know, because people think of the big players, De Bruyne, Haaland, who else is there, Anthony, etc. But there are so many, and we go through the list of some of the names, and you can see the amazement on their faces, and how many languages they speak. So then we go into more of the international scene, and talk about the same trend in those different countries. Again, it's something that hooks the kids in, something that sparks their interest. Then we go into some of their favorite players, and talk about some of the languages that they speak, and the impact that each player has on the team. For example, when I tell them that Messi only speaks Spanish, doesn't speak English, only speaks very broken English, and if he was to move to, he moved to PSG recently, not speaking a word of French, but everybody around him was tasked with learning Spanish. So we talk to them about the impact some of the big players can have on the rest of the team, and almost not forcing them, but almost inspiring them to learn another language. But then we also go further into it, and we talk about it not just being footballers, but also being coaches, but then going even further into it and talk about some of the roles externally from football. So recently, they have made up a role, because of the vast amount of international players that now move, because football is a global sport. There's a thing called a player liaison officer, or a role called a player liaison officer, who's the person that almost takes care of the players' needs outside of the pitch. And that person has to not just speak one language, but has to be multilingual, because they're not going to recruit a football liaison officer for each and every player. So most player liaison officers speak 4, 5, sometimes even 6 languages. And something that they didn't know. Going further into the business side of football, and talking to the pupils about the different aspects that are covered, for which languages are very useful or even needed, almost necessary. Again, something that many didn't know. Going even further and trying to make it as inclusive as possible, because on the surface of things, football looks very, very male dominated. But if you look at the top left-hand corner, that's Rafaela Pimenta, who just took over as one of the most powerful agents in the world from Mino Raiola, who recently passed away, and she looks after players such as Haaland, Pogba, Donnarumma, so she's one of the most powerful agents out there, and she's a woman who speaks 5 languages. In the middle here, you've got Kate Abdo, who was born here in Manchester, I believe, and she speaks German, French, and Spanish, and translates. On the right here, especially for the kids, of the social media age, you have Fabrizio Romano, who is Italian, and they now say, if it doesn't come from Fabrizio, the news aren't true. So he's a journalist who covers news on Instagram and Twitter, and has all the info before it comes out on Sky Sports. And like I said, if he doesn't say it's true, it's probably not. And he's probably one person that the kids can really relate to in this Instagram and social media age. Oh, stop there. Also, a lot of people wonder what languages are spoken on the field by referees, especially during international tournaments. So we tell them a little about that. Many of them probably won't know this person here. Some of you might know, because you guys are probably from that generation. Pierluigi Collina, who's currently the head of refereeing at FIFA. He speaks 4 languages himself, and successfully runs that refereeing department, and also requires all of his referees to be not just bilingual but multilingual. And again, there are so many roles outside of the pitch that we inspire the pupils to that they can aspire to, other than just football, because football isn't for everyone. It wasn't for me and Mark. Myself and him didn't make it. However, we found other roles within the game. Me much more so through languages than Mark, and that's how I got my opportunities. Something that I always transmit to the pupils as well. It is really the languages that afforded me the opportunities that I have today. Going to one of the workshops that we run. So we have one here, which is a Copa America theme. So that's for the target language of Spanish, where we set them a task of teaming up with different pupils, where they may be split into teams of 3 or 4 or even 5, each of them representing a country, and bidding for a place at the Copa America. It might be the African Nations Cup if it's French, or another European competition if it was German. We then set them on a computer. They split up into 2 different groups: travel and tourism, as well as a football group, and are then tasked with finding facts that would make them appealing to the committee, which is another team. They are then tasked with, like I said, finding those facts. For example, how many hotels there are in their country, how many airports, what the capital city is, what the best food is, how many times they've won the competition, some of the notable players, however many stadiums there is. And obviously we tell them that can be fictional, because to find out some of these things can be quite hard. But the message is just to use the target language. We also give them some sentence starters that they can use to then fulfill that task. And at the end of that task, the committee gets together and they ask each country questions based on the criteria, and then they get together to then discuss who won the bid to be the host of the Copa America. That's an example of a practical sorry, not a practical, but a classroom workshop. And then in terms of a practical workshop, they are given the app, and they have to find terms and phrases in one of the warm-up chapters, which we will set them as well. With the app, they then get together, practice some of the words, go out on the court or on a grass pitch, whatever is available at the school, and then they are tasked to work in the particular target language at hand. Let's say they're playing football. For every time they use English, they get a yellow card and are then sin binned for 30 seconds. If they do it again, come back on the pitch. And as Mark mentioned earlier, the team that uses the target language the most, in combination with the goals, of course, because we do want to make it fun, would then win. We would give them the chapters that that would be most useful for them to use the app with. Those are just two examples of some of the workshops that we do. Another example would be a press conference, where they would role play and interview one another, whether it's a journalist interviewing a coach or a journalist interviewing a player. We give them some sentence starters, etc., that they could use to then fulfill the task again. And we would differentiate that for different age groups. There are different workshops, different tasks for the different key stages based on ability. So we do differentiate. We keep that in mind. But yeah, so that is just something that we do for the schools. That would now be the end of our presentation. Mark, I'm not sure if you had anything to add to that.
No, just thank you for your time this evening, and we look forward to answering any questions that you may have.
There we are. Sorry about that. Schoolboy error. Amazing presentation. Thank you so much. That was really, really interesting, and lots of really lovely comments in the chat. People saying this is really inspiring. It's fantastic. We do have some questions, which is lovely to see. So, but first of all, just thank you so much for sharing your passion around languages and football, and your personal stories. I think are really engaging and really interesting. It's been lovely. So please put some more questions in the chat, everyone. But we've got a couple to go over now. The first question was around where you're willing to do these sorts of sessions. So presumably all around the UK, is that right? You could go to Scotland or anywhere in England or Wales, or is there any limits to if a school got in contact and wanted to ask you to come and present? Would that make no difference? Any destination is doable,
as long as it's on this island. Yes.
Okay. So there we are. So the person that asked that question, they direct messaged me about it, so I won't say their name. But that sounds fantastic. I'm sure you're going to get lots of requests as well following the webinar. The next question, which I think is a really important one as well, is there a minimum number of students who would need to register interest in order to have you visit for a motivational talk or a session on the field? What have you found has worked the most successfully with school visits? Is it better for specific year groups or a mixture? What would you say to that?
So we started going into schools at the beginning of November, and what we found so far, most schools do it based on year groups. Mm-hmm. Although some of them mix and match, it's more a case of, let's say, somebody telling us that they want a year 9 group for us to come and visit. Most of the time it's then year group assemblies, and then they're split into smaller groups where we do the classroom workshops. They select the students that they want, that they feel would benefit most from it.
So with the workshop, say, what would be either the minimum number or the maximum number? Obviously in an assembly it doesn't really matter, but if you were working with smaller groups, what sort of sizes would you work with typically?
So that really depends on the year group and the content that they want us to cover. As a rule of thumb, if it's in a classroom, we would say 30, but me personally, I have run a workshop with 50, but then we would also be limited to what we would do with those 50 students. Does that make sense? So
yeah. Absolutely. And do you like bring kit with you, like you'd bring footballs
yes.
and that sort of thing? So that's all the school would have to do is just ask you to come along. You'd have all the kit. They wouldn't have to provide anything. Is that right?
Yeah. The only thing that we would ask for is because we use the app, and in most schools, phones are prohibited. So we do ask for them to provide either laptops or maybe a computer room so that they can have access to the app. And access all the necessary vocabulary that might need for the session.
Okay, that's perfect. Now, just in relation to the app in particular, we've got lots of more questions coming in, which is lovely. We've had a couple of questions around the trial period. So, for example, someone has put, I've downloaded the app on my phone and I get a 14-day free trial. If I want pupils to use the app in school, then they would have to register and sign up with their own email address and be subject to the 14-day trial period too. Is that right? Is that how it works?
So that is if you use the individual version of the app. So if a school, let's say, contacted us, we would make the app available to them beforehand, so that they would be able to use that. Obviously, if they wanted a school license, then it's something that we would make, bespoke to the school, something that we can, almost negotiate on, depending on how many licenses they want, etc. That might be something that Mark can speak on better than me.
Yeah, so obviously the individual user version that you download from the App Store, it works out to £25 per person per year on an annual basis, which spread across the whole year is about £3.49 a month, something like that, which we think's affordable, and we try to keep it an affordable price. But we understand that for schools that isn't going to work. So what we've done for example, a school in the south of Spain that sort of works with footballers, a bit like an international football academies. We've given them a number of licenses, like a large number, at a discounted rate. So depending on whether you was to take 10 or whether you was to take 50, we could obviously discount that more. But for example, rather than it being £25 per license, it might come down to near the £5 mark, for example. Right. And schools could take however many they needed for the number of pupils that they need them for.
Yeah, that's great, because we had a question about, is there a minimum amount of students to have a school license? So how would that, or is that each school you take on an individual basis? Is that right?
Yeah, there's tariffs which we could go through with each schools if they requested them. But as I said, like for example, if you was to take 10 licenses, you get a smaller discount than if you was to take 40 licenses, for example. So we can adjust that depending on how many schools need.
But just to clarify, if we go into the school uses the app for free for that day or for that duration. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, and none of the pupils would have to register themselves. We would give them our dummy accounts with our passwords, and all they would have to do is input that.
Yeah. Awesome. That way, there's no exchange of personal information or anything like that.
Perfect. Now, this is a really good question in relation to the number of school staff a school would need to sort of support, as it were. So how many school staff would you need per workshop to help with supervision? And would they have to be languages staff for the best results? What would you say to that?
Again, it depends. It depends on the number of students. It depends on the number of workshops. We can do them by ourselves. Sometimes there are other staff members present, depending on the type of pupils. Sometimes, they have some that are a little bit more challenging, and they know that they might need more staff around, so that really and truly depends on what the school are after.
Okay, so again, that would be you'd negotiate that on an individual basis.
Yeah.
But so just to clarify, they wouldn't have to be language teachers. Is that? I'm imagining that people are thinking, well, in the department we could only say release one person for the workshop to support, or that would be done presumably that you just chat it through and work out what would work best.
Yeah, precisely.
Yeah. Okay, let's do some more questions. I know that this was, you'd answer this in the chat, but maybe on the recording about the online workshops. Do you offer online workshops?
Yes. So in the past, Mark has done a few before where, you know, he's done some virtual talks with a couple of schools, you know, because that was their preference for whatever reason, you know, and yeah, it is possible to do online workshops as well. Although we haven't had actual workshops done online, it is something that we can do. But in terms of virtual talks, yes, we deliver them.
Awesome. The one that I delivered on was a number of schools. It was an event. I think it's about 700 pupils across a number of different assembly halls that we presented to at once, and that was a really interesting event. So we can definitely do things like that as well. That's
great. And presumably that would mean you could talk to any school all around the world. I'm just thinking of the recording, people watching the recording of this, and you're based in the States or Australia. Apart from the time zone issues, which I'm personally I'm very well of at the moment, you'd be happy to give a motivational talk to presumably any country that was interested.
For sure.
Yeah, lovely. Okay, let's go through. Again, really important question. So in the presentation, we saw a lot of male role models, didn't we, for football? I know in the game we saw there was a female role model. Are there? Let me just get the exact question. Yeah, in the app or what have you, do you have any female role model footballers? For example, the Lionesses who did so brilliantly in the summer.
So in the app for each country, there is a male and a female. You know, we have covered ourselves there. We it very inclusive.
yeah. On the audio files and on the imagery in the quiz as well.
And,
yes,
and even in our presentations, as I alluded to, Rafael Pimenta and Kay Abdo, there's also Ziegman, who's obviously the Lionesses manager. You know, we do try to make everything as inclusive as we can, you know, because we know that football is a global game for everyone.
Absolutely.
For
Absolutely.
boys, girls, women, and men. So yeah.
Fantastic.
Because the presentation that you saw, it wasn't the full presentation. It was snipped. It is a little bit longer than that. I just took you know, key content out in order to make it short and snappy, but still meaningful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we've had some more comments about or questions around getting you guys in. So Paula, for example, is saying, how do we contact you, Pierce and Mark, regarding an in-school talk or an activity and working out the price? How is the contact details just on the website?
Well, yeah, or we can type them into the chat here as well.
Yep. Okay,
I'll do that now as we speak.
Fantastic.
You know,
So while you're doing that, Mark, let's see if we've got any other questions. Let's have a look. That's everything I think so far. We've got a lovely comment here about someone in the chat right now had invited you in for an international day at school. You're coming to an international day at school in a few weeks' time, and this person thinks that that's going to be a real hit, which I'm sure it would be. So, for example, with European Day of Languages in September, for example, I'm sure you're going to be booked out giving different presentations around that. Just any sort of international themed day or week, I'm sure you'd be a fantastic choice to get in and to do workshops and inspirational talks in assemblies, or obviously online as well. That'd be wonderful. I'm sure you're going to get lots of offers as a result of this webinar. I think that's all the questions I've got so far. Does anybody in the chat have any other questions for Mark and for Pierce? And thank you as well, Mark, for putting the email address. And again, I'll read this out for those people watching the recording. So it's info@futbollingo.com for more information and quotes. Great. Any other questions, everyone? We've done very well keeping to time as well. It's been great. I think that's all the questions. So any final messages from yourself, Pierce, or from yourself, Mark, to finish us off?
No, we would just like to thank everyone for taking time out the day. You know, we know, especially for language teachers at the moment, you know, it's exam time. specifically speaking exams. So
Yeah.
everyone's really busy, you know. So yeah, we just like to thank everyone for making it and giving us a listen.
Awesome.
We appreciate it, guys. Thank you very much for having us.
It's been great fun. Really, really interesting, innovative webinar. Thank you so much. And look forward to checking out the resources. I'm sure everyone's going to be having a look at the website, downloading the app, trying it out, having a chat with the head of department if you're not the head of department in the chat, seeing if there's some budget available to get you guys in, and to motivate young people, which is what it's all about, isn't it? Getting them to carry on with languages. That's what this is all about. And we're all absolutely singing from the same hymn sheet on that. So thank you so much for inspiring us with a different take on how we can do that. Because I think it's been a really interesting presentation. And I love your personal stories around how you got started with this, and all the sort of professional work you've been doing as well. It's been really, really interesting. I'm sure that would be very motivating to young boys and young girls for sure. So thank you ever so much, everyone, for coming along to the latest webinar. It's very much appreciated. As per normal, I will be putting the recording onto my YouTube channel, and then we'll make sure everyone's got the link sent out to you. And I would really encourage everyone to get in touch with Mark and Piers. And I wish you a very happy end of evening. And thanks for coming again. So I'm going to stop the recording and wish everyone good night.